Hello, good afternoon. I can see good afternoon now, 12 o'clock. So I am Emily Jiang. I'm a Java champion. I work for IBM. I'm a senior technical staff member. I work on MicroProfile and Liberty. Who knows MicroProfile? Okay, brilliant. The reason I come to do this talk is when I go to conferences, talk about MicroProfile, the first question they ask, what's the difference between MicroProfile and Spring? This is hence this topic. Who knows Spring? Wow, okay. So hopefully, this is a talk that is directly geared up towards the Spring developers. If you know Spring, hopefully at the end of this talk, you will know MicroProfile pretty well. Actually, talk a bit about this this photo. This year, I visited Dublin Jiang. If you are a speaker, want to visit the Jiang, the Dublin Jiang is great. So I did a couple of talks, and then local artist designed this image for me. It's really cool. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do a quick compare between MicroProfile and Spring. And then towards the end, hopefully I have some time. I will do a quick demo about MicroProfile. How can you create your first microservices using MicroProfile? Since you know MicroProfile pretty well, I will skip quite a bit. Who does not know MicroProfile? Okay, just one. Basically, if you do not know MicroProfile is awesome. Open source community, quite a few folks here, and it's open the door to you. So please do log into microprofile.io to see whether you would like to contribute. The door is always open for you. So it's directly is kind of the, community driven, and we release API and TCK to the Maven Central, and also we publish specifications on the MicroProfile GitHub. We do 3 releases per year now, and in the past 3 years, we have been doing quite well. And from 2016 to 2019, so we have about 9 releases so far. We just released 3.1, and very soon we are going to kind of release 3.2 because there's some issues with MicroProfile 3.1. So this hopefully give you some message. We are going really fast, and we are not afraid of making mistakes. If we do make a mistake, we quickly fix it. So this is the latest release. We have 4 Java EE components: CDI, JAX-S, JSON-B, and JSON-P. And this is the new specifications from MicroProfile. And we have 9 platform releases. This is called umbrella release. And we have a standalone releases is kind of not part of this umbrella release. We have context propagation, reactive stream operators, and reactive messaging. They are not part of this platform release bucket as yet, but we are discussing when to add them in or create separate buckets. So it's MicroProfile. There's many implementations. Like IBM, we have Open Liberty, WebSphere Liberty. Payara has Payara, and also is Red Hat has Songtail, and also Quarkus is trying to implement also support MicroProfile. Oracle has a Halidon, and a small company called Commonalities EE has the implementation as well. So it's a lot implementations for you to choose from. Who loves the standard? Here you go. If you love standard, MicroProfile is your choice. So basically in this talk, I'll quickly go through when you create your microservice, where do you get started? The first thing, and you need a starter to create your service. So in MicroProfile, we have start.microprofile.io, kind of equivalent to Spring initiator. And then is you create your microservices. So this is the technology to help you with. And if you want to create a reactive, we have a reactive stack for you. And then is you want to add your quality of services. So you have config, fault tolerance, and security. And then operation concern, you have a health check, you have a health and metrics, and also distributed tracing. So I will go through them all one by one. So hopefully you will get some idea. So this is our website, start.microprofile.io. I will demo in a minute. So this is Spring. So these are quite similar. So it's the difference is you have a lot runtime to choose from. In Spring is kind of one runtime. Okay, the first thing you create a microservice. So microservice is a kind of buzzword. It's basically is when you think of microservice, like it's just do some task, right? You have a user to directly call into this task and do something. This is a kind of microservice. The first thing you need to expose yourself to the end user. And how can you do it? So one of the very popular technology is called RESTful. So this is still very popular. This is still mainstream. So so this is the REST API. So in Spring, you use a Spring Boot application, and then you use a REST controller. So with these two files, you can directly expose your endpoint. In MicroProfile, we use JAX-RS. Who knows JAX-RS? Okay, so it's pretty good, pretty well. So this is just you have an application, one file, and there's the JAX-RS resources. With these two files, you got endpoint. So and then your end user can directly poke that endpoint and get a response. So the second thing is this is kind of enough for doing microservice. Just use JAX-RS. You can do hello world. Just use a microservice. And then the next thing is when you design a really complicated microservices, and you need to think about how can you maintain it. You need to tidy things up internally. How can you make sure you can create loosely coupled microservice? The technology you use is dependency injection. So basically, inside is pretty neatly wired up. So this is inject instance to this one. So it's called dependency injection. So in a Spring, you use you use dependency injection. Use auto-wired. Who knows auto-wired? So good. And the other thing is Spring also supports GSR 330, basically auto-inject. So it's however auto-wired kind of much more popular than auto-inject. In MicroProfile, we use the CDI. So CDI has support for the GSR 330. So you use auto-inject to directly inject instance to this variable. So the next thing is you create a microservice inside, very nice and tidy, and then you need to describe yourself, tell others what are you doing, what you are capable of doing, right? Like me, I introduce myself. Similarly, so microservices need to introduce themselves. It's called document your APIs. So what is it like? So in Spring, and it uses test first approach. Basically, you add this dependency, and then you define your REST service, and then you define all the necessary. You do all your tests. So it's basically you need to do all your tests, and then in the test you add some call into some APIs. And then you can, with this, you can generate when you run the test, you can generate a really pretty a doc. So in MicroProfile, we use the Swagger API. Who knows the Swagger? Okay, great. So if you know Swagger, and this is kind of the MicroProfile, once we use the Open API, and if you go to that, we automatically expose this endpoint /API. So this is the directly Swagger API's response. So I mean, it's from here, like this endpoint on this path is a get operation, and this is a summary, and what does this endpoint do, and also is kind of the operation ID field. This is the method name, and also response 200 means what. So this kind of information, and one the beauty of the MicroProfile Open API is that all the JAX RS resources automatically opt in for this documentation. You do not need to add anything, you will get documentation. However, if you really want to add the like a more description, and then you can use this kind of annotations, like say API response and operation, this summary. So this summary directly correspond to this one, and this description correspond to this. And in Open Liberty, we also have the Open API /UI. You can see all this UI information, and you can directly invoke the endpoint from this UI as well. So the next one is like right now. Like you create your first microservice, and then it's inside nice and tidy. You use like CDI to wire everything up, and then you introduce yourself, and then it's and then you wait for others to call you. How can you make this connection? How can you connect the microservices together? So in MicroProfile, we use the MicroProfile REST client. This is in Spring. There's it's called a fin client. So if you know Spring, you just know annotation fin client, and then you directly inject that client. It's very similar. In MicroProfile, we register this REST client, and then we use @inject at REST client as a qualifier and inject it to it. So this one directly corresponds to this one. So we enable the fin client directly equivalent to @REST client, and then here inject directly to this inject. So and then this fin client directly correspond to register REST client. So this is kind of very similar. So the next thing is you say, okay, once the two services talk to each other, how can they communicate, right? What's kind of payload? What kind of payload format do they support? So one very common payload is JSON. So that's why we have really good support in both Spring and MicroProfile. So in Spring, you can use JSON. You can directly call these JSON APIs. Or I don't know if this is well known or not. In Spring, they also support JSONB as well. Anybody know that? Use that? Oh, you use it? Oh, cool. And in MicroProfile, we can Java Jakarta eShop. So we adopt the JSONB and JSONP. So we directly use JSONB. So this is a quick example. Like in MicroProfile, this is a kind of JAX-RS endpoint, like a get operation. And this is the payload type is JSON. And you just directly declare this type, inventory list. And then JSONB is automatically solve all this serialization and deserialization for you. So the next, this is pretty much done with the imperative. Basically, you know your backend. So it's you know where your backend lives. You directly call into your backend. So the other things, there's another category. You do not know your backend, right? You just basically publish messages, and then the other consumer directly consume messages. the connection between you and the consumer, the publisher, consumer, message brokers. So in this type of the microservice, you use reactive. Basically, you don't want the publisher have to be blocked by the consumer or likewise. So it's in Spring, and you can use, the Spring reactor. Anyone use it? Okay, so my prediction was quite right. I think now we are at the beginning of the reactive. And if you don't know reactive, I suggest you, Martin over there, going to do a talk on reactive. So it's this afternoon, right? 3:10 past. So it's reactive is kind of is going to be very popular in the next few years. So it's in Spring, you use the Spring Reactor, and you can directly use the Kafka API or Spring Boot annotations. So here you can directly Kafka listener. This is the equivalent to be a consumer. And then this is kind of, this is the publisher, can directly inject the Kafka template, can directly publish a message. In MicroProfile, we have MicroProfile reactive stream operators and also the reactive messaging. And we can use RxJava directly, the API as well. So we can use this one. We define the two APIs. One is outgoing, one is incoming. This obviously is publisher, and this is the consumer. We can directly connect to the Kafka. Kafka message broker, basically you can directly connect it to Kafka. Both of them, publisher and consumer, connected to Kafka, and use the MicroProfile config, directly config it. Okay, now is actually, if you do really a couple microservices and very kind of want to see how it's going, this is pretty much all you need to learn. However, if you use a series in production, you need to handle hundreds of services. You need to add quality of service. So you kind of think, okay, I don't really want to have to repackage your application just because I changed some configuration value. You need to think about best practices. Anybody know the 12-factor? Okay, cool. So in 12-factor, the third factor is externalize your configuration. So basically, you need to think about how can I configure my application externally. So you will use the different way to configure it. In Spring, you can use declare your configuration externally, and then directly inject the properties in your application. And then you can free to change anything any value in here. And then in your application, you can directly, it will reflect the real value. So similarly, in MicroProfile, you can declare your configure property external to your application, and then you can use the configure provider.getConfig, or you can directly inject each configure property in your application. So the next thing is how can you make sure your microservice behave all the time, no matter what, rain or sunshine and whatever, or backend is not working, and you still can respond, right? So this is we want to build a resilient microservice. Call it fault tolerance. In Spring, you use historics, or you can use in Spring you can use this history command, so in this scenario is set a circuit breaker. You can just do an enable circuit breaker, and here you can declare that history command and etc. This is a fallback. You can use a fallback. In MicroProfile, and all this is kind of all annotation. You can do a timeout, retry, circuit breaker, fallback, and also you can do the asynchronous call as well. So in here, this is a retry. This is kind of, you can configure how many retries you want to do. This is the maximum retries twice. You can at most try twice. So the next thing is that you think you have to, if you deploy your microservice in the cloud, you have to secure it. Basically, it's if you are doing monoliths, you can hide a lot of things inside. You don't expose their interface, right? But in microservice, is if you deploy to the cloud, they are kind of free. Like anybody can invoke this microservice. For example, you have like a sensitive information, like a salary check. You don't really any arbitrary person to directly find out how much you earn, do you? So you want to secure it. In Spring, you use Spring security. So you can directly use the enable web security, can directly secure the backend. In MicroProfile, we use MicroProfile JWT. Basically, on the top of the standard JWT, we add 2 more claims. One is the unique the user. The other one is groups. So which access groups this user belong to. So once this token created, once the user login, and this token will be created, has the user created user identity plus this user's access group. And then this token will propagate to downstream. So when the downstream backend endpoint will find out, oh, okay, you are Jiang, and you have admin right, and then okay, you are allowed to access this endpoint. And this is MicroProfile JWT. So in order to secure the backend, we use Java EE security. We have to say which operation can access this backend. So basically, in this in this class, basically is only user admin can access this any operations in this class. Okay, so this is kind of you add a quality service. And then right now, actually, you are pretty good. However, you go home, and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're thinking, okay, I'm wondering how well my microservice is behaving in the cloud. It's last night, maybe the kind of how many users accessed my microservice, how fast my microservice responded. So you want some metrics data. And also, you want to make sure your microservice is intelligent, can talk to the cloud infrastructure. If this microservice is not well, and the cloud infrastructure that Kubernetes can kill this microservice and start up a new one. So this is what we have, health and metrics. So let's look at health first. In health, so basically this is a way to directly talk to the cloud infrastructure like Kubernetes. So in Spring, it has a Spring Boot actuator to directly expose the endpoint /health. And in MicroProfile, we have like MicroProfile health. It has 2 endpoints. One is the health ready, the other one is the health live. So this is directly corresponded to the Kubernetes readiness and liveness probe. So this liveness probe can directly call into this endpoint, and readiness probe can directly call this endpoint. So this is what I mentioned, the metrics to monitor your microservice performance. So in here, again, in Spring, and you can use the Spring actuator. It has a /metrics endpoint. So you can directly call the counter service. You can get a counter service, and then you can do a list valid or list invalid, can increment and etc. In MicroProfile, we use MicroProfile metrics. You can directly use annotation like at a time to monitor how fast your endpoint processing the request, and counted is how many callers into this backend, etc. So in MicroProfile, we also expose this endpoint /metrics. So the next one is distributed tracing. So this one is to solve the scenario in the cloud infrastructure, there's hundreds of microservices. It's one operation might be called into 20 microservices. If this is not working, it's very hard to find out which one is not working. So that's why we need distributed tracing to chain them all up and find out how well they are doing, each one are doing. So in Spring, they use the Spring Cloud Stack and to directly automatically chain up this operation. In MicroProfile, we use MicroProfile open tracing. So automatically, if you are on the JAX-RS, automatically propagated correlation ID. And then if you use Jaeger or Zipkin, this tracer implementation, you can see the one single span to see, okay, this operation first go to service A, and how long it takes, and then later on go to service F, how long it takes. And then you can see, okay, it takes 20 minutes in service C. Okay, service C is kind of not responding. So this is I rushed through this operation, all the MicroProfile and Spring capabilities. Now I give you a quick chain them all up kind of approach, give you a kind of bird's eye view how does MicroProfile works. So if you go to the start.microprofile.io, give a lot of credit to Rudy over there. He put a lot of awesome work in this starter. I lost it. I lost my, I cannot, oh, okay. Let me see. It's interesting. Can you see you cannot see the screen, right? Let me see. Display. I just lost the, can someone help me? Get the windows. I should have a mirror. So this is, I need to mirror. However, this mirror doesn't come up. Oh, hell. Or to display. Here.
Yes.
It says display off.
And this should show me the options.
Show me reactions.
And this is
very strange.
So in the menu bar, do you have the screen there?
Here.
It's up here. No. Good. Sorry, no, you had it there. The other screen.
Yeah. Maybe I directly drop it to somewhere else.
The one behind there?
Yeah.
This arrangement.
Oh, yeah, you are right.
Yes.
Mirror. Thank you. This is called demo panic. Okay, you can see my screen. So this is a MicroProfile starter. So you can directly to create a project. For example, just a demo, and choose which version MicroProfile you want. And you can see there's 3 choices for you, like Songtail, Halliday, Open Liberty. If I choose Open Liberty, I want to demo all of them, so I can just download. So you can automatically download here. However, I have something already set up, and then you can go to that directly and do a Maven clean install to start. In Liberty, introduced something really cool. So it's called the Liberty Demo Mode. So here, so this is my service A. So this is generator service A and service B. So service A call into service B. Service A is kind of has a lot operations. The first one is the JAX-RS operation, so it's application and then the JAX resources. If I do a hello world Eclipse Con Europe, and then I can go to the endpoint here. So it's when you do a Maven clean install and you start the you do a Liberty. You do a Maven Liberty dev, you will get to see the endpoint. So this everything is kind of go to the local host 81. Now is if I do this one, automatically do a Eclipse Con Europe. So this is kind of you can code along and all the changes automatically reflected on the live. So the other thing is I talked about the injection. So I can easily I can say I talked about configuration. I can just create the config. I can just say Eclipse Con Europe. I save this one, and then in here, like I can inject. I can inject that property. I can just say name equals conference. I can say string conf. Then I can just say conf. We'll have a 2. So this is very powerful. Like you can define the conference anywhere in some external resources. So you can see it's automatically like popped up. The other thing is I mentioned I would like to create a really like resilient microservice. So this is a service A and directly call into service B. What if service B is really slow? Let's say have a few sleep, like 3,000 millisecond. Exception. Now let's see like how slow it is. So this is kind of this is directly go to the REST client, so backend. So you see the take the ages come back, right? What if you are like mission critical? You don't have this time to wait, and then you can use like the MicroProfile for tolerance to help. So basically, you can say, actually, I don't have that many time to spare. I can say if it's more than that, I will time out. And in here, it's very important you want to make it non-blocking, asynchronous. And with this, and with that asynchronous, you need to make sure is returns the completion stage. And then here, you can have a say completable future. Just want to create a completable future completion stage to like that. Completable future. Completable future. Let's see now. See, it come back, right? But you didn't get anything. It's because it's timed out. So it didn't wait for like 3 seconds. It's only wait for 200 milliseconds, and then it's come back. With this, it's very powerful. So okay, so with this, you can do you can fall back to something else. You can say fallback. You can say fallback method, my fallback. And then with that, you use exactly same like the signature. However, here you need to say my fallback instead. And then, for example, here I directly return something arbitrary. Let's see. So you could fallback is kind of automatically. Oh, hang on. Oh, is I will have in the dev mode. I will have some error here. Maybe. Let's go. What do you say? Sorry. Oh, thank you. See, someone is listening, is watching. Okay. So here. Yeah, it's automatically fallback. So let's go back to the. So basically, I want to go back to say is kind of a takeaway. So it's a Spring, like so you're free to choose whatever the programming model you want. So it's so basically it's whatever you find more productive. For Java EE background, I think you can feel free to choose MicroProfile. It's more closer like a programming model for you rather than like going to Spring. And however, if you are a Spring developer, and then if you want to take a look at MicroProfile, just feel free. A lot of runtimes support both Spring and MicroProfile. And Spring is more popular. I know it's from the, if you go to conferences, talk to people, a lot of people use a Spring developer. However, MicroProfile is taking up. Basically, it's more and more people is started experimenting with MicroProfile. Is Eclipse Foundation did a survey last year, beginning of last year. So it's 18% showed interest. And then like 6 months later, they did another survey, like 32% people would like to use MicroProfile. So is a Spring and MicroProfile share some similarity, but there are the differences. And MicroProfile is a lightweight way to do the creating microservices. And there's some, as I mentioned, there's some difference. Spring is also is open source, but driven by Pivotal, and it can be like is also is open source. However, is not directly community driven. And in MicroProfile is completely open. Everyone can say something, and also is contribute ideas and etc. And in Spring, if you know what you are doing, yeah, you are fine. And there's the kind of, if you don't use a golden path and doing something yourself, is very soon you will just run into big spaghetti balls. So in MicroProfile, we try to make sure it's really simple, has less code, and make sure it's kind of everything is wired up, and you don't need to mix your business logic with so many APIs directly from the quality of service. In Spring, you manage your own dependency and bring in your own libraries. In MicroProfile, runtime provided everything for you. So in this way, you can build the very thin wall. So this is very powerful for the cloud native development. Basically, you can frequently release your microservice, and because you can just build a few K thin wall, and all the rest, the app server and etc., they are stable. You don't need to push them every time you trying to change one line of business logic. In Spring, like this fat jar. Every time you change one business logic, you push together with all the third-party libraries again. With that, I think that's pretty much done. So can I do a survey? Do you think if you are a Spring developer, do you think MicroProfile is simpler? Cool. Anybody is Spring developer, now you have some feel about MicroProfile now. Understand? Okay, cool. Thank you. I can take one question if you have. Oh, I have a T-shirt. Whoever asks question, I have a T-shirt, or maybe 2 questions. Okay. Any questions? Okay. If no questions, just feel free to find me from my IBM booth. And if anyone wants a T-shirt, and come up to get a T-shirt. Thank you.